welcome to the Healing Homegirls podcast. I'm the host, Jasmine, and welcome from Season Dialogue, Lisa Marie. Trying to keep my nerves down, my excitement for everyone. Be professional. So welcome. Very
Thank you.
honored to have you here.
Thank you so much.
And so I would just like to start with um, your story, your testimony, where that started for you, and kind of go from there. I really don't pre-write my questions. I kind of just like having conversations and seeing just what wisdom comes out of that from collective wisdom. So
Um, I always say lives, and
yes.
we don't really know how to navigate through it until something just disrupts our life, and we
Mm.
know we have to do something different. And so there was just a plethora of things that happened throughout my life that started in the early years, childhood. For a lot of people, that's where it begins. And I think, as children, we're so resilient. We're able to
Mhm.
things, in the back, but it kind of creeps up whenever we become adults. Um, and so my healing journey started in 2020. And I believe that's when the world was literally turned upside down. It gave people, opportunity outside of their jobs to kind of, we didn't have a choice. We kind of had to stay home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, people were losing their lives to COVID. And I lost my mother that year as well. So
Oh,
for me, that was the trickling of the healing journey. I'll be, very upfront. I talk about this in my podcast as well. My mother and I had a very estranged relationship. Um, Before she passed away, my brother and I kind of saw some changes in her, something different. But, sometimes with parents, when they think that they know stuff, they don't want you to know. And so my mother was a nurse as well. So she did a lot of hiding things from us. So even if we noticed, she would repeat the same thing over and over. And so when we would bring it to her attention, she would try to no. So it was a beginning of Alzheimer's for her. And then
mm,
way. And so she was hiding a lot of her health issues from us. In that time, again, there was not a closeness in our bond. She was trying to get close. But one of the things that we struggled with as mother and daughter was communication. I didn't find out until later what my mother, her life was, and the reason why she showed up the way that she did to me. And so it opened up so much because after her death, I didn't get the opportunity to grieve because I was so angry with her. And then when things started to come out, that is when I realized, wow, not only do I need to take this opportunity to just really be real about what I experienced as a daughter, but also understanding what my mother experienced as a mother, a widow, and a woman who was told in so many ways as being a Black nurse who got her degree in her 70s that she wouldn't amount to anything. So with all of that, I took that personal, intentional part of healing because I realized that my mother had not healed a lot of the things that she had gone through, and that is the reason why she was how she was. And so that was the beginning for me. That was the beginning for me.
wow. And
We
so until
didn't
you stop being angry.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, yeah, we didn't we and that was one of the things we didn't communicate at all. My mother was very hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes when they're like that, it's hard to you can't say what you feel. And so she was very much like that. And so I had a lot of reluctance and resistance from my mother. And it was difficult for me to grieve. But after I realized, my aunt actually, she called me one day just to check up on me. And that was the conversation that was needed. She just opened up. My mother
Mhm.
was the youngest of 11. So
Mm.
experienced a lot in their life. And when she explained that to me, it was like if I had known before, with just being non-judgmental and with clarity, I would have understood why it was that my mother was the way that she was.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, to go backwards in their healing because just my advice I give on my podcast to, some of my listeners, I always say I called my grandma. I was like,
Mhm.
"What is it?" Because I always heard my mom say, she apologized, and she would say, "I just did the best I did with what I knew." That's
Yes.
absolutely right. And I give
Yes.
her that, and I always and we had that communication to where we were free to talk to each other. My no contact with my mom was because I felt physically unsafe. But when I started to kinda talk to my grandma to understand why she yes, we do the best we know, but then with what we know, we can always learn to do differently. From just my parenting, me having my 3 boys being married now, and then, um and it's crazy how aligned every guest that comes on kinda is with my journey because I took a break from the podcast because we had to come now to help caregive with my husband's siblings, his mother, who has Alzheimer's.
Ah, wow.
Yes, yes, after he just lost his father July 1st, and then it just went rapid to where we're like, "You can't live alone because you're not remembering these things." She wasn't remembering that he passed, and it was hard on them, so because we moved in, I'm just a little more gentle and do the life coaching, so I talk to her every day to where they don't have to deal with, not being able to grieve because they have to keep reminding her that their father is gone. So it was just a blessing how everything happened to where even it's everything I've been praying for, like your last, episode about prayers and waking up in prayer, and I had took even a break. I was like, "I'm not doing the tools that I know to do. I'm not I haven't journaled." And every week I tell people it can look differently. Adjust what you need with the tools that you know. And I was journaling and I heard your podcast and that facilitate I'm like, I need to journal. No, I need to get back on my prayer warrior spirit. And I can look and I changed my whole perspective of having that caregiver burnout because you have to remind people that's there. It's really hard. And I was just praying like, well, my kids now, even though we had to move in, we moved into a house. They have a house. They have a yard. We have space. I can wake up and have my coffee and journal before the rush. And I
Mhm.
should take that for it just being all is well.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so and then you come on and right on time, and it's just like, I know
Mhm.
things are moving how it needs to move, and I needed that rest.
Mm. Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to share a little bit because I'm like, wow, like your mom having Alzheimer's, did you have to caregive or do you have like advice for someone who's going through that now?
Didn't. I didn't. My mother hid a lot. She hid
Yeah.
she hid those symptoms because it was the early stages of Alzheimer's. And
Mhm.
she was in and out. But when she was in,
Mhm.
she would like, Ma, you just said that. It's almost like immediately she began to try to do and act as if she was normal. So yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't at that point. Hmm.
And what did you discover in your healing journey works for you, the tools that you use to help jumpstart your healing journey, and how did that look going through even with COVID and trying to stay safe and being on your healing journey? A lot of people kind of ignored that even though COVID was horrible, it made us have to stand still.
Yes. So for me, I've always written. I enjoy writing. So the jump start for me in my healing journey was writing. It was being honest with myself. And I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of us to do. You know, we live inside of ourselves and we have this interpretation of who we are, but we also have to understand that we experience ourselves differently than other people do.
Mm,
And so in that process, my sons saw me differently. They would tell me things about me that had changed. And I thought everything, you know, I knew what I was struggling through. But for them to see it outwardly, that's when I knew, okay, it's seeping through. It's not just me containing it, like they're seeing it. My husband was saying the same thing. And I just began to journal, just journal how I was feeling, recalling some instances and some things that I had went through that I knew that I hadn't gotten over, you know.
mm,
We say we get over it, but we don't forgive. Either we don't forgive the person or the situation, or we don't forgive ourselves.
mm,
And so that journey for me was just being honest, like writing down everything that I had experienced as an individual and tying that into disappointment, into sadness, into unforgiveness, being honest about how it made me feel, being honest about how it showed up later in situations with friends and even my children and my marriage. And just sitting there and just being honest and realizing that the cycle that I was going to continue would mirror and mimic what it is that I saw within my mother. And I
mm,
didn't want that. I didn't want that. The biggest thing for me was when my oldest son at the time, he was 17.
mm,
Um, he said, you know, Ma, you're not, we can't get you to talk.
mm,
You know, you just seem so disengaged. And
mm,
I remember the moments that they would literally like, you know, just share something with me. And I was there, but I wasn't there. And I tuned them out. You know, in our minds, like we have a million things happening. And I think in that moment, I didn't realize that I was there, but I wasn't present with my children. And so when
mm.
that became an issue, and then I have three boys as well.
Oh, look at God showing out today. No.
Yes. And well, you know, listen, like I say this, and I have friends who have sons. It is very true. Like boys are different with their mamas,
Yes.
and they're not as vocal in just normal situations, but when they see that their mamas are different, when
Yeah.
they see that they'll let you know. And
Yeah.
my kids, my boys are so abrupt to where it's like they don't sugarcoat it for me. You know, they just let me know like this is weird. You know, I know
Yeah.
what's
Yeah. Yeah.
what's going on, mama, you different. And so I didn't want that for them. I didn't want that. I didn't want that. I didn't want them to experience that. The biggest change that happened in my mother's life is my father. He passed away suddenly. Um, I was 10 at the time, and my mother she lost it, like lost it. They were two peas in a pod. And my mother went through the grieving process just like you would normally see people do, the crying. Um, she didn't cook for a while, you know, just trying to get herself back together. And then one day, my mother just was like different. Everything was, it was too much. I could tell it was too much on her. They shared responsibilities as parents. She would become frustrated very quickly, agitated. Her grieving wasn't crying; it was anger. And so that anger was displaced into physical abuse, into emotional abuse. She pushed a lot of people away who wanted to only help her. My mother wasn't conscious in understanding that when people come to you, they're doing so in love. My mother pushed a lot of people
You
away.
didn't trust it.
Yes, so she dealt with that, you know, losing friends and even family members, and then trying to keep up with, you know, her workload. So I saw the dwindling effect of what death did for my mother. And then to have my son say, you straying away from us. Okay, let's whatever it has to happen, let's do whatever. I
Right.
didn't term it as healing, and not in those sorts, because I didn't rectify with the word healing, but I
Mm.
realized that I was healing. That's
Mhm. Even
actionable
when
healing.
you don't mean to, God will
Yeah.
put you in a place that's like, "This is what's happening." Because I noticed that even, with my healing journey, I didn't my husband was kind of, like, saying it, like, in a smart aleck way, like, "You need to heal or do because you say these stories about your mom. Because I have a mother wound, like, a deep one, and he's like, "You say these stories about your mom, but you're kind of my parents have been married 50 years, and I never saw them throw a chair." Because he would just he was he grew up in the church, and he would just be explaining, like, "Hey, this made me feel this way, and I'm over here, rah, rah," throwing chairs and being just taught when I realized I was the toxic one, that's where I'm like, because he would just be like, "Hey, our kids are watching." He literally said that. And my son, my 9-year-old, he was at school, but my 2-year-old looked up at me like he was scared, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm giving the generational pattern right here. This is where it started. I have to
Yes.
change something in me, and so I was like, "Where is that?" And it went to my first sexual experience, which wasn't, a wanted one. I was 13, and you always were you get that with that generation that you were promiscuous, so I just thought I believed I was promiscuous and fast, so I never confronted it, but I'm like, if I tell my first time with other people, they tell me that was rape, they cringe, they say that's uncomfortable, like, for them to hear, so what is that? So I actually went on TikTok, and I had photo he came on People You May Know, and so I
Mhm.
posted the picture of him, and people were like, "Well, why don't you report it? Because the statute of limitations is lifted just last year." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Why don't I report? Why don't I go back and do everything they didn't do for me? Like, why didn't anybody report that?" I was 13, he was 33.
My
That
goodness.
it's not if I saw a 13-year-old with anybody above 16, I'm going to be like, "Hey, come here." Like, I know how I am. I'm always asking kids questions, "You okay? You safe?" So I did that for me myself. And they gave me a therapist to help with the court proceedings. And that therapist, Elena, helped me. She facilitated that. She's like, "What have you been doing?" And I was already journaling. I started the podcast as it was called Dear Mama, Hi Daddy, because I went to the sources of my trauma. I was like, I'm just gonna use this as talk therapy because I have no one. I'm tired of telling my husband, and although he doesn't mind, it just feels like I'm wearing him out with these stories. I keep repeating it. It's very repetitive. It's. I say that I'm healed, but why do I talk about it so much? I want to be able to have that inner calm that I see so many people do have, and so through therapy, she introduced me to meditation and going back and seeing self, and I didn't realize how mad I was at the 16-year-old me,
Mhm.
that I had to literally close my eyes and go back and hug her, and what I with the tools I know now. And so that's so important to realize when you are being self-sabotaging and relate that pattern to how your mother's self-sabotaging was, because hers was the same way. She lost her baby brother, and her grieving came out as anger, as impatience, as all these things that I did not want to be for my son, for my husband. I want a long marriage, so going backwards is very important, and nothing's scarier than going backwards. So, yeah, I just wanna like, I know exactly how you feel because 'cause I'm just like, this is this is wild that, even when I didn't know we were gonna move in here, like, we were kinda just doing shifts to help take care of my mother-in-law, but it just drained everybody had caregiving burnout, and then my younger nephews and nieces were kinda tired of doing that shift because 'cause they're in their 20s, they wanna live their life, they don't wanna always have to come to Nana's to spend a night, and then, what if she goes wandering, all these things, so we're like, "I'm a stay-at-home mom, we're married, we can do this, we have the team," me and my husband, and, coming into this, right before I was in the apartment, no one discussed us moving anything. I was just like, Something's telling me to lock my hair. Like, I just went out." Yeah, and so I yes, and so I'm looking at your locks now, and I'm just like, something even when you don't mean to, like, it was just another shift. When you
Mhm.
don't mean to even go on I thought I was on a healing journey. I realized, like, it's a spirituality journey. It's discovering your spirituality aside from what we were taught, and there was so many restrictions that I
Mhm.
was taught, and I got a study Bible and start cross-referencing, and I'm like, "Oh, it does mention I am allowed to meditate." I was scared of meditating because that
Right.
word in the Christian community, they are you light a candle and you all of a sudden worshiping something else, and I'm like, "No, it's just whatever makes you comfortable." So how does that look like your relationship, with your spirituality and God? And was that always something that was in your life, or did you get more into that through your, discovering your healing process?
You mentioned something. It's so crazy how our lives, our situations are parallel.
Yeah.
So, my mother, after I guess in her own way, was trying to move forward. She met a man, and I was about 14, and he, advances.
Yeah.
So, we were my grandfather, my mother's dad, he was a minister, he was a preacher, and we were going to church. That was the first time for me that I was avidly listening, but I had a struggle with what I felt like God represented in my life, because when something happens to you and you're so young, so you are leaning on the information from God, and they're pouring into you through sermons, and it's your understanding, but you're also not understanding why it is that you're going through so much.
Mhm.
So though I wanted to lean into the biblical teachings, and even I had a Bible that had I guess it was like a glossary of like words. If you wanted to
Mhm.
look up a subject, you could go and it'll take you to the verses. And I would do this. And it was a temporary, fix for me. Like, okay, well, I've always believed God is not going to put more on you than you can handle. But I feel like I've handled enough. I
This is a lot, yeah.
feel like So I'll be honest, I was in the middle. It was like, I'm young, I'm trying to navigate, I'm trying to figure out the word is saying this, and this is happening in my life. And it honestly wasn't until my mid 30s where I was seeing stuff happening for my good.
Mhm.
You know, Oftentimes I think when we think of situations that we've been a part of, we experience things, the bad things, it takes a toll on us. It's like I didn't do anything to deserve
You
this,
grow real weary.
very. But God began to plant this seed of, I would always get these visions of speaking or talking, public speaking, talking to women. But see, for me, that was a nightmare because I don't do public speaking.
Yeah, yeah. I was getting those visions too. I was like, "Oh, that's not me."
That's not me.
Yeah.
So what, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it was reoccurring. And then I began to just pick up more audibly, listening to sermons and really trying to align my life because I wanted to live it intentionally.
Yeah.
And then into going towards my 40s, I said, okay, now I honestly believe that every situation is set up for triumph.
Mm,
I would not know, I would not lean on God unless I saw the breakthrough beyond what it is that I experience.
mm.
So for me, I'm like you. I believe in God, I pray, I meditate.
Yeah.
I am in my corner where I talk to God. That that relationship that I have with him is my own. I
Yes.
don't allow people on the outside, people have their own opinions. It doesn't penetrate me because I know what I have with him.
Yes.
And as long as I know where I am aligned with the word and I'm hearing it, I feel like the goal was eventually, maybe I didn't understand it then, but God journeys us and navigates us through for us to understand what our purpose is.
Mm.
And so the purpose has hit itself and flourished now. And so I'm grateful because I could have just been like, I don't believe in God,
Yeah.
me
Yep.
through. He showed me some things and he also endowed me with some form of wisdom to
Yes.
understand that it happened, but guess what? I'm gonna allow you to have the voice to talk, to speak, and to be open about what it is that I carried you through. Because guess what? You didn't die.
Yeah, right. Did you die? But did
It
you die?
didn't die.
Yeah. No, that's right. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have said
yeah.
this in the past. And it's a pretty bold statement of saying I had to go through those things. I had to be molested. I had to get abused. I had to be verbally, physically, and emotionally have that experience with my mother to see what pattern I needed to break for the next generation. And God knew not to give me a girl. Every time when me and my husband went to find out the sex of the baby, and it was a boy, I would look at him, I said, "God doesn't want me to have a girl yet. God doesn't want me to have a girl yet." And he would just look at me like it was just a joke. No, no, there's no way I could have broke this generational pattern, curse, trauma, whatever the wording anybody wants to use. I say curse.
That's right.
I had to break it with having boys, and they have to break it by getting married and having their I know, I know. And it's so crazy you said you're 30 because I started this journey 28 and I'm 29 now. I'll be 30
Mm,
in December 1st. So this is my last year in my
wow.
20s. And yeah, I'm just like, and what God has been showing me, even with introducing like prophetic dance and really growing that individual relationship with Him. And that started with actually going to church and realizing, because I wasn't really, and I know obedient is a strong word vocabulary for some of my listeners, they get on me. But I think there's an obedience that I follow with my husband because there's a respect that he gives me that he's deserving of that. And we're proud of that. We stand in that. But he didn't find a church. He wanted to like church shop because he has church hurt. And most of the people he went to church with growing up, they end up being Trump supporters and talking to him crazy, and so he has this betrayal trauma from church,
Yes.
and I was like, "I need to find a church," like, during that healing journey of just I was like, "I need to go," so I went to my sister-in-law's church, and nothing was wrong with it, I love it, I still love it to this day, but he just had to make the understanding, like, when we find a church, you you love the church, you love your wife like you love the church, and he said, "How much do I love you?" Like, we're gonna have to be giving money, we're gonna have to give time, we're gonna be having to give our children service, like, we're gonna have to invest in that in different ways that, you're not thinking about now, and I still was like, "That's not what God's telling me," but then when you really view God, husband, wife, you
Yes.
really notice like, yeah, he's leading from spirit. Something in his spirit is gonna stop me, is saving me from myself being too involved there that
Mm.
I would have another burnout or another thing to heal because I just give all in. I'm like, "You wanna be my friend, squirrel?" That's just my character. So he's like, "You need to calm down."
Yeah.
And go meditate, do the things that I go to work for you to do. You do your meditation journal. He's like, you have time to do these things. And it's like a lot of women that I guess, I got kind of married young, I'm 30, turning 30, but he's 37. But learning to heal and you're learning my identity while being married was hard for me because
Yes.
I didn't really know where to start when it happened because I just knew what I was taught. Throw a chair if you don't like what you hear. Distract the real situation by doing something really just it's embarrassing to talk about, but again, it's the resource I needed to be for other women that don't have value on marriage in today's generation. I have nieces and sisters younger that kind of just like, "We don't trust these hoes," but it's like that's what they say. Look, they don't sugarcoat either. I'm just like, "Y'all just think I'm your little friend, okay?" But they really, I'm just like, "No, you can learn to trust and you should date." And, it's just follow spirit. That's all. Everybody is going to make their mistakes, and in your 20s, that's when you should make them. But for me, I can't. I might have kids watching. So how was that? How old were you when you had your first son, and how was that experience with um not being healed yet? How was
Mm,
the unhealed version of you?
I was 20. I
Mhm.
was 20 when I had my son, and I was 20. I was 22 when I got married.
Oh, I was 20 when I had my son and 24. But yeah, so I'm just living. So you're the gateway, and that's what I love about your podcast, because you are the gate, like the cheat code, so we don't have to go through certain things if you just really listen, take your journal. Like I get my journal and coffee, make my coffee, sit up, listen to you, Black Girls Hill, and
Mhm.
just pick the title that's kind of resonating,
Mhm.
and that does facilitate that. But how was
Yeah.
that? Sorry, I kind of veered off.
I I was, I'll be honest. I was 20. I was
Yeah.
scared. I
Yeah.
was scared. I know that it was going to be a major shift. It was going to be a major change in my life. I was scared to death. But the moment that I had my son, and I think that's what, a lot of women, like something kicks in.
Mhm.
You know, it's like we didn't read a book,
Yep.
but that love that we have for a child, I just knew I wanted to do everything different. But
Mhm.
I this in caution, but with love.
Mm.
Um, I got married at 22, but I say this because I had to be real. I got married to run away from the issues that I had,
Mm.
that I was going through. Sometimes, we leave one situation to go into another with the emphasis of being loved and protected, and um, not wanting to endure what it is that we walked away from. And so for me in that situation, it was running away from my mother and her boyfriend and running into the arms of my husband, who said, I'm going to take care of you. Now, we 20, I'm 20, 20, well, 21 when we started the relationship, 22 at marriage. He's 3 years older than me. Um,
So
but
25.
even that young, I mean,
Yeah.
it's imaginative. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's a fairy tale, and so you don't even know.
You had
In
the vision in your head without the execution of how he
yes,
did. It's like, what could you do that I can't do? That I see the younger I won't even call like my nieces or sisters out, but when that younger generation speaks, and they're seeing it more as they get older when they talk to their young siblings, they're like, they don't know anything. It's like, what do you know at 18? What do you really know? Nothing. You don't. I didn't know nothing. Yeah, no, you did. What? Yeah.
the world doesn't prepare you for it. You're
Yeah.
not prepared for it. And so even in that situation, like starting off in my 20s already with a child, and then let me see, at 23 having my second son, like, everything evolved and everything happened. It was happening quickly. I had an intention in being the best mother and wife that I could actually be, but we must be honest, it was immaturity tied into that as well. So I'm trying to navigate, and really just, and I didn't have time to heal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
What
I
does that
didn't have.
even look like? Yeah. That
Hmm.
word was just not I didn't even, especially because just in culture, in our culture, they
Yes.
scare us away from therapy.
Yes. Yeah.
At least in my family of origin, I should say, they was like they don't they are scared of it. Don't What's in the house stays in the house. You tell someone at school you might get taken away. It's like I'd rather endure this than a stranger to it, you know? Um it's just Did your mother was she involved when you had your son? Because
No,
I'm thinking, yeah.
not. I stayed with my mother for about 6 months because I was in the transition and trying to find my own place.
Mhm.
Um, but I also understand too. I'm not going to take this away. I was in college at the time, so there was expectations.
Yeah.
I got pregnant in college, and so I understand from a mother's point of view that's a huge disappointment. And so she held that kind of over my head. But
Yeah.
then she saw me, move out and I got married. She tried her best to be a supportive grandmother to my children. She did what she thought was enough in her point of view. And so I can't take that away from her because I
Yeah.
knew what type of mother she was, and I
And
knew
they're
that,
always better grandparents than
yeah, oh, yeah,
always. It's like, oh, and then you do something, they're like, "Calm down." It's like, "You." Right.
yes. That was She's
Right.
like, why you fussing? I'm like, Mom, you
Right.
fussing me the whole time, but now you try to tell me
Mhm.
to fuss? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Over here. Uh-huh. Yeah. That's I Oh, I'm sorry. I thought my baby called for me. I have 2 under 2, so when they call, that yeah. Um, on your healing journey for those 2 years, was it just the what year did you, what inspired you to start your podcast? I wanted to also get into that.
My healing journey. It is what made me want to start. I remember talking to a friend, and we were just, you have a close friend you could just talk to about any and
Mhm,
everything.
mhm, mhm.
We were pouring, and she said, the as long as I've known you, you've never talked to me about this. And she said these type of conversations are the conversations that many women are lacking. Just to be able to sit with someone and just in a non-judgmental space, be able to hear and also just resonate with what they're saying. And so as we had that conversation, I had always wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah.
But it's like I think that timing it works when it shall. It wasn't, the timing wasn't perfect. And I know this to be what it was. Some people say, well, God told me. Now I didn't hear a God voice, but
Mhm.
I push. I felt an energy. I felt like an emergency to do what it was that I kept in the back of my head. And so I started it. I said, Lord, I don't even know. Like I have stuff written down, but I
Yeah.
don't execute this. I
Yeah.
just need you. I just need you like in this sacred space when I am like pouring and talking. And even when it becomes that at one point I was like, maybe I'm sharing too much, but then I felt him say no.
Keep
People
going.
need to hear it. They need to hear it. They need to know that they're not alone in some of the things that just life throws them. We don't have to be all the way open, but the testimony is when we are able to talk about it and get through it and we release it and someone feels it, they understand it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love, that you said the push because in different ways, every guest that I've had has said, like the last one, she's like, "It felt like someone was literally pulling me by my hair, like, 'Come this way.'" Yep.
Mhm.
And with the when I had Dear Mama, Hi Daddy, I kinda was getting everything out, and I was also going to therapy, so I had, like, a double way to release and speak, and, because I felt like I told my therapist, I felt like my whole life I've been sad with
Mhm.
moments of joy, and I want all joy with just, like, moments of sadness, so I don't wanna feel all sadness, and starting the podcast and naming it Dear Mama, Hi Daddy, I felt the same way, like, I was sharing too much about, like, my family business, but I was so silent for so long, I'm like, "I wanna speak up now and make it loud," like, no, that didn't happen that way, or like I'm like, it did. And so I started like I felt like I was really having like memory issues or like that imposter syndrome. Like, am I lying about this? Like, no, I still have the mark from that. Like it did, like like
Mhm.
that happened. I know that's a memory. So with the meditation, I that was able to help me go backward and relive certain things. And I tell everyone all the time, like, yes, you have to relive those events. And when I started like that's when God introduced my gift of speaking in tongue, and I was just like talking. I was like, "What am I?" I was like, "If my husband," and I kind of stuff crept in, because I'm like, if my husband opens this door and sees me just, I was rocking back. I really felt like I was possessed. Like I was just speaking, but I was calling on God, but I was moving weird. But I was letting my body flow, and I realized how much trauma my body held, that um I was uncomfortable dancing in front of people. I was uncomfortable taking up space.
Yes.
And when I started to, I literally put my head on my yoga mat, and God, before a couple of sessions before that sessions, a couple of prayers before that, he started saying, "Bring worship," because he introduced me to praise and worship, and I got my flags, and then he started saying, "Bring your journal." Like I heard just a little whisper, and I know it's not directly God, but that small whisper is our spirit, and because it's an advocate of God, I say that we are of God. His omnipresence is filled with us. So when we listen to that, we really realize that we are walking around, we are godly beings, one God, but his omnipresence makes that so. And so I was writing, and literally he said, "The relationship with your mother, you're not allowing yourself to have female relationships." And
Mm,
I scribbled it down, speaking in tongues. I scribbled it. It was messy. And he said, "You're about to have a bunch of homegirls." And I put a bunch of homegirls. It was like taking notes. And then I put podcast, the healing homegirls.
wow.
Had to relaunch. I had like a whole Instagram with all these nope, don't even do that one. Start a new one.
Yes.
Start from the bottom.
Yes.
And I
Ah,
started yeah, and so the Healing Homegirls, it's like really special to my heart to, like you said, women need these conversations more, to not be uncomfortable with what happened in their first sexual experience. That needs to be said. That needs to
yes.
be said. I know it's uncomfortable, if it's uncomfortable or, triggering for other women, then you have to go back and see why it's triggering you, that you can't
Right.
those those uncomfortable truths.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
Just um, yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that. I'm sorry. Just something was like, "Express that."
Okay. Yeah, I get it. I get it. That I want to say this as well. Like I understand too, people come from different places. Um they may believe in this, they may believe in that. I'm one, I believe in what I believe in, and I don't push. My main objective is I know who God is in my life.
Yeah,
And if someone hearing it wants to experience that, I invite them to be in that space.
yeah,
But I will be honest and say this. The beautiful thing about having a relationship with God is that, when people speak of the push or they have the feeling of certain things, I don't know if it could have been felt if God wasn't present, if you didn't have that relationship. Because you know that what you're feeling is divinely put.
yeah.
It's God. It's not you, it's God.
It's a spiritual.
It is, and
Yeah,
so makes you it's an alarm to say, "This is not me, this is I feel this."
yeah,
Because I know this feeling, the next time that I have a feeling that is reminiscent of what I felt before, Imma move on that,
mm,
because I've journeyed to this place and I know who God is to me, and I know what it feels like to be wrapped into His arms and
yeah,
to be held and to be said, "I got you."
yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's and I always give that advice. I'm like, I say God, but if you replace it with universe, or because just his omnipresence, whatever push you feel, and I hope someone gets that from this conversation. Like, move on it, be obedient to yourself and honor yourself, what you're feeling. And I get that feeling even now, like a little less than when I'm speaking in tongues, and having my conversations with God. But even just throughout the day, when I'm like, like an alarm of just like knowing who to have close and who not to, and set boundaries, and like put people in just boxes like, "Oh, I didn't like the way that was said. That didn't bring me peace. So maybe I'm just gonna set that boundary with that person, not share that with that person." I have my journey. I have all the tools I know to use, and now I like being alone with myself more than I mean, God's telling me experience the having friends and creating a safe space for other women, but when I'm alone, I'm really not alone. So that's another thing that fills my cup. Is
Yes.
there any advice? Because I'm going into my 30s. So is there any advice for this generation that kind of felt that shift? Because there is a whole slew of women my age that are kind of going, not even my age. I now my best friend Tiffany, she just turned 40, so she was just getting out of her 30s. That's my best friend. And so when we talk, we're like we're glad we have this safe space to send audios and kind of grow differently, but still grow. The objective is to grow with our found, and we always say, like, I'm glad that our foundation is God because we know what our aim is. Um, is there any advice for someone when they get to that shift and how to, I know you said like to just keep going, but like what advice would you give for that shift of someone that, I guess, of any age, but
Yeah.
just what you've learned?
I'll say this. The 20s are the exploratory stage where you have to think about it as being kept in a place until 18 or 19 with your parents, right? And
Mhm,
so you know what you like, but you don't really know what you like until you enter the world.
mhm,
And so it is the stage of discovering, number one, who you are, your likes, your dislikes. It will change, but it's the beginning stage.
mhm,
You're gonna a lot of mistakes. Your reasoning is off. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to get it right the first time, but learn from the mistake.
mhm,
Let's not the cycle because when we repeat the cycle, it goes into the next stage of life if you don't stop it there.
mhm,
In 20s, try your best to understand who you are and learn your worth. I think the earlier that you do, the better off that you are. You're not seeking for love. You're not seeking attention. You're not seeking validation. Learn to, in your 20s, if possible, learn to sit with yourself.
mm,
Learn to sit with yourself. I think the 20s also is that stage where, you have your friends from high school and college, and, y'all are liking the same things and y'all are doing the same things. And sometimes when that happens, you take on the likes of other people. So you don't know exactly what you like. So take moments to sit with yourself and sit with God. And then when you are shifting into that 30 period, this is the time where that high end of maturity comes in. Now, you had those lessons in your early 20s, mid 20s.
mhm,
Now is the time where you're going into those 30s where it's like, I did that in my 20s. I'm not repeating that cycle. If you're at the stage where you want to find love and a partnership and you're thinking about, children maybe in your latter 20s or in your 30s, you are culling yourself to be a more mature and intentional being, meaning the job, the partner, you're owning the boundaries. You're not going to let another person run over you. You know what love means to you. You know what your expectations is in love and love within. In the 30s, this is the time where we have to really think about life more on a deeper level. Again, that 20s is the playing,
yeah,
but the 30s is I want to set this up because in my latter 30s, going into my 40s, I want to be at a place where I am comfortable. And
yes,
I know life will have its changes and it will give me some things. But because I'm leaning more into wisdom and I'm leaning more into faith and I'm being intentional about my walk in whatever regard that is, I'm just going to live a life where I feel comfortable and I know who I am and I'm
mhm,
feeling face up with everything. I also think that the 30s is a great time to, again, that imagination from our teens and our 20s is there.
mhm,
Might not often, it might not be the right time. We might be still playing around and doing what we do, but I think the 30s is an ideal time to lock into some of the things that we've always thought of doing.
Mm.
If space, is given, if if you don't have children, or and even if you do have a child, still ruminating and thinking of the things that you want to do. Because the 30s for me, I feel, was the early 30s was still, trying to get myself together. This is personal for me. But then that
Yeah.
latter 30s was, ooh, I I want things to work. Like,
Mhm.
I want to see more of my growth. And that's where I experienced a lot of my growth as well, in my latter 30s. But it was intentional. I'll say this too. Let me stop real quick.
Mhm.
Moving from your 20s to your 30s, you will see a big shift in friendships.
Yeah.
Um, People will move away, they'll get married, they'll have kids. You won't have, that person may not have as much time as they did for you, or you'll start to grow, they'll grow before you. And then there'll just be a shift in a dynamic. I always say in those situations, listen, if you can help it, when that shift begins and you move apart, let's not take that as a bad thing. Because I read a lot of stuff and I understand that situations with friendships, it can be tumultuous. Like, y'all got in a bad argument, now y'all don't
Yeah.
talk no. But I always say this: lean back into why you loved and liked that person. There
Mhm.
was something that you shared, there was something that they taught you, there was something that you found out, about you, the freedom
Yep.
of you and the freedom of them. And so, even if friendships disperse and it's not the way that it was, you learn something.
Mhm.
Lean on that past friendship to build into something new,
Mhm.
where the friendships that you want in your 30s, it has intention. You want a girlfriend who is non-judgmental. Y'all could talk about, the Bible. Y'all could talk about relationships. Y'all could talk about your future. You could talk about a business. This is
Mhm.
where 30s come in at. And girl, when you hit the 40s,
That's what my friend now, like, we just became best friends, like, she's my cousin-in-law, but we went on a Bible study with the family, and then we kinda just clicked, and so we started, and we're like, "Wow, like, this you're my first adult, like, my friend in my adulthood." Not my adult friend, sorry, I have adult friends. But she's my first, friendship that I've made in my adulthood, and it was going into that shift where, I got married before my friends. I've had my son, my 9-year-old before my friends. I was 20, they were out, I was with my son, so I had just different experience. I had an apartment, they were still at home. I had the mom I had, their mom let them, like, wear their makeup, and I just thought things like that was weird. I'm like, "My mom would slap the crap out of me if I touched her things," like, "Whoa, what is this, healthy relationship?" So I got to see that, and I think that they were good for that season in my life, and now going into this season where now I'm kind of replacing that, I mean, we have a big family, and so kind of with my mother-in-law having the Alzheimer's, this family is everything I prayed for. I've always wanted a family. I didn't have that, so God created that for me, and I have a bunch of nieces, nephews, sister-in-law, brothers, cousin, like, they're all here, and to now be in the house that my husband grew up in,
wow.
cooking with her old she's like, "You could have all this dishware, you love to cook," she's just I cook for her, so she's like, "You here, yeah, that was good what you made yesterday," And so she's giving me all her, dishes, and she has, like, the molds of the cakes she used to make, and so I'm living in my prayer. Everything I pray for is what's
Wow.
happening now. It's not bad. It's bad what we had to experience, but I think even in death, there's lessons, and seeing that my father-in-law had something to leave, and my husband, he kinda gets in emotional about, as he should, he lost his father, but he says, like, his nieces and nephews got these experience with his parents and grandparents that he can't offer to his kids, but I'm like, "Look what they are offering."
Right.
They're right out there playing in the yard. We have to look at what's good, 'cause everything that's happening is of God, and God is good. Even when it's bad, the bad things that I've went through in the past, it was good because now there's women that will email me like, "Hey, just know you've helped one person today."
Ooh.
That is all my soul needed
Yeah.
to hear for me to just that push that I don't feel like I'm being pulled by my hair anymore. I just feel like, "Just keep going Whatever you
Mhm.
think of, write it down. The Bible is a bunch of journals. God
Mm,
put words in their head. It's a bunch of journals he told us to write down. Just journal, and you'll have your story. And
yes.
so I just am inspired to say share that because of what you said, but I'm just like, I'm excited for everything that's happening. Even in and I wanna we can, end it, I just wanna say congratulations on your 300K. I saw that was more
Thank
confirmation because she's coming. I was like, I just need to keep going. I needed this break, and you are just so you are the motivation, the inspiration. Although we get it from our source of God, but you have those virtual friends, right? That you see and you get inspired. It is inspiring. It's like I need to keep going. So that
yeah,
did it for me too. So congratulations on that. I'm so proud of you.
thank thank
How did that feel when it I just wanna
everything, you know what, I'll say this, that's why I know God is in the midst of everything. When I tell people that I did not start my season dialogue page until January, they think I'm lying. I didn't start that page.
Mm,
And when I say that that push was so enormous, the way that it was felt, it was almost like God was saying, if you don't do it now,
mm.
if you don't do it now, all right, play with me.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so I'll say this to you. Um, this is what I felt going in. We are inundated with people who they share from their heart, they share with love. And then you have people who um, do so to become what it is that in their mind they expect, with no goal or intention behind it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The feeling that I had was when your heart is pure, when your intentions are pure, when you are pulling from a source that is deep in your belly, that is just buried in your soul, you are giving life to people who are lifeless. And sometimes people just need to know that they are heard, that they're seen, that they're acknowledged. We all have a different purpose, a different journey, a different goal in alignment to what God has for us. Keep going. To hear, to know someone to write in and say, this changed my life. That person will share with another person what it is that you said that ministered to their heart and that resonated with their soul. And I think so many times when I'm looking at someone whom I see a reflection of, we pour so deeply because we know what it feels like not to be poured into. And so it comes from a place of just, I understand. Whatever God appointed you to say, whatever God appointed you to do, don't give up. Don't think, well, God, I don't have no. I've learned enough to know that it is always us who prolongs the blessings that God has for us. It is always us. We always feel that we are not equipped, that maybe we don't have, as much knowledge. Maybe we don't even have the wisdom. But there's something so beautiful about the way that God works in our lives, where He says, if you just allow me, I'll give you all of the things that you didn't think that you was equipped with. And so I said all of that to say that you don't know what impact you have. I don't look at, even though 300K was, a celebratory moment, and it was, I don't really look at the numbers. I got
Mm.
it 200K, and girl, I saw it and I was like, oh, I ain't even saying nothing. Because I just, I don't look at the numbers. Every single
Yeah.
time I'm writing, I'm asking God, Lord, just put something in me. Anytime that I'm going through with the podcast and I have a subject, I say, God, just be with me. Because
Mhm.
it's not me. It's
Yeah.
you're using me as a vessel.
Mhm.
And if I do my due diligence and doing what I am supposed to be called to do, then I've done enough, you know? And that's the way that I feel wholeheartedly when he positions us in a place that we're supposed to be. That's how we're supposed to operate. It's not us.
Yeah,
We
and
are
it keeps you grounded and humbled.
absolutely.
And I say that all the time. Oh,
Oh,
okay. It's a box. Okay. Can go with daddy. Almost done. Okay. You could take the box with you. He's been searching for this, but I hid it behind here. But when I start, I was like, he's not gonna get this. Just shreds of box everywhere. But that it does. It keeps me so grounded to when I'm journaling I'll post something on YouTube and I literally will hear that small voice like, don't look at the number. Don't even go back and see how many views. Just post it. Just keep posting. And so I love that advice. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to honor me with your presence, to experience you like you here. Um, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, hopefully I'll talk to you soon. I will be messaging you.
Oh
Do you
my
want to say bye? Come say
God.
bye. He wants to say bye. He always says bye to my guests. He somehow sneaks downstairs.
I love it. Oh, got the arm out.
Doing-
Oh, you are so
Yeah, he does so cute. He's so cute.
my goodness. He's so handsome. Oh, oh, I just want to
Thank
grab his
you.
right.
I always do. I always do. Yeah, this is my fella.
Oh, I
Mhm.
love it. Oh, handsome. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
You're welcome. Have a
All right.
blessed day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.